and all
Yeah,
that.
but let's just analyse this a minute, because this is where, as I say, look, I've said we didn't handle things in the right way, and I've said that to you, and I've been through all the points that you've asked me, and I think you would agree that I have tried to answer all those points. What is completely ridiculous is to start... David Sainsbury's name is published in the Labour Party accounts. That's the only reason anyone knows about him. This planning application was, as far as I can work out, was decided by a planning inspector. You know, the idea that because David Sainsbury gave to the Labour Party that some planning inspector decided a planning application for Sainsbury's, I mean, it's ridiculous.
So isn't that what...
Let's wait and see how the argument goes, but my own preference would be to say there should be a limit on donations.
All right. But you haven't decided on that. You say it might be £5,000?
No, I haven't decided on that, because I mean, I don't think it's very sensible to sort of make, you know, to make a decision now before we've seen what he actually says.
But we're not talking...
Anything, provided it applies to all parties, and I think
So it might be $1 million.
And no, and I think there is what I was going to say to you is that I think there is a case for making it a far smaller amount.
And what a
case for that too. I mean, again, I'm not going to snap on it now, but I think there's a case for that too, provided it applies to them.
Well, it would have to, wouldn't it? It apply
well,
to
no,
them.
hang
It would, wouldn't it?
Of course, it would apply to any future questions. What I'm saying to you, however, is that I'm prepared to disclose the previous donations, and do that now, provided the other parties are prepared to do the same. What I'm not prepared to do is to have Labour people literally sort of pilloried and dragged through the mud because we disclose their names when the Tories are sitting there, having turned around some deficit before the election, vast millions of pounds deficit, into a surplus, and run a hugely funded election campaign, and they're not prepared to disclose any names or tell us whatever has happened to that money.
All right, before we...
We have always, again, I said I wanted to explain this point before. There are exemptions. Formula One is in a particular position. Why? Because it's a uniquely global sport, and because you have a limited number of Grand Prix. There are, I think, 9 or 10 in Europe. There are other Grand Prix in other parts of the world. Every single country that has a Grand Prix either has no advertising or sponsorship restriction on Formula One or makes special arrangements for Formula One. Every single one. That's why when people say, I mean, one of the myths of the past couple of weeks has been when people have said, well, it's such an extraordinary decision, so he must have taken it for a bad reason. It's not extraordinary at all. What would be extraordinary is if Britain, the home of Formula One, wasn't listening to arguments that were being listened to by Germany, by Australia, by Canada, by France, by Italy, by all these other countries with Grand Prix. Now, however, so the Formula One is in a particular situation. It's particularly dependent on tobacco sponsorship. And what would be ridiculous is if we lost the Grand Prix to Asian countries, and there are 10 applications from Asian countries outstanding. All of them have said they will allow Formula One to be screened without any restrictions at all. They would then be shown back in this country.
Take that point.
Right.
We've just got that. So.
Now, we do, however, want to make sure that we ban tobacco advertising and sponsorship. That's been our goal all the way through. The reason we went for an exemption was because a derogation of a longer period of time, say with the review clause, was never on offer.
Kind of exemption, yeah.
Yeah, that was never on offer. Now, of course, we're in a position where we want to see the European Union directive go through.
Right, so can I...
we will negotiate about it, but my bottom line is I am not negotiating anything unless I am sure that Formula One have got the time to adjust and the ability to
So can I clear this up, because people might be confused by talk of derogations like that. In other words, is that what you're saying?
Well, no, I'm not going to start negotiating the thing now.
Well, 8 years, but I mean, is that the theory that you're...
The theory is that we will go as far as we can in banning sponsorship, provided it doesn't wreck the industry. That's the theory. Now, it could be done in a number of different ways.
All right, but that's
actually, the exemption, that's why I say to you, there are a whole series of things that were under discussion as options.
Okay. You've been...
Believe that, and I hope that people know me well enough and realise the type of person I am to realise that I would never do anything either to harm the country or anything proper. I never have. I think most people who have dealt with me think I'm a pretty straight sort of guy, and I am. And I think that what I would say to you about that, and I do find it, these things difficult and upsetting, is I think there's been a desire to say right from the word go, this can't be as good as it looks. You know, they're all the same. The Tories were sleazy, Labour's no different. I don't believe we're like that at all. Before the election, I set out what I call a sort of 10-point contract with the people. And remember, you know, I know why people elected me. They didn't elect me because of Formula One or tobacco sponsorship. They elected me because they wanted their schools and hospitals improved. They wanted their society brought together. young people given a chance, the crime tackled in our streets, and the jobs and industry built for the future. And they wanted this country to feel proud of itself again. Now, I set out before the election what I called a sort of 10-point contract with the people. I will fulfill, John, every one of those 10 points, and I will be held to account if I don't. And, you know, some of this rubbish about sort of U-turns and all the rest of it, sort of things like fox hunting, I know why I'm elected. I know what people expect. I know what I can do for this country. I mean, I believe, and, you know, you can say this is arrogant, but I believe that I can put this country on a path for the 21st century that makes it one of the great nations of the modern world. And I will do it by keeping the promises that I've kept. Now, I'm sorry about this issue. I should have realized it was going to blow up into this type of importance before, but I have honestly done what I thought was best for the country all the way through. I'll carry on doing that, and in the end, I have to stand at the bar of British public opinion at the next election. And I will do so, not just with a clean conscience, but I will do so, if I've got anything to do with it at all, having delivered and kept every single promise I made. Because I said I would deliver something different, and I can do it. I can do it.
But you've been tarnished.
I don't believe I've been tarnished, no. I think the mistakes have been made, but I think, in the end, the country's got to look at me, it's got, in a sense, got to decide whether the person that they believed in is the same person they've got now, and it is.
Prime Minister.
Apologize for the rain, but the sun is shining in our hearts today because you are here. Today we celebrate. We will stand against those who defy the will of the international community, bringing terrorists to justice in the case of Pan Am 103, maintaining stability in the Persian Gulf, where the British aircraft carrier Invincible is patrolling the waters alongside our U.S. fleet, something our men and women in uniform find great strength in. Mr. Prime Minister.
Thank you for those words. And today, in the face of the threat from Saddam Hussein, we must stand together once more. We want a diplomatic solution to the crisis, but the success or failure of diplomacy rests on Saddam. If he fails to respond, then he knows that the threat of force is there and it is real.
About to go into the back dining room. We intend to be very firm on this, and I hope that we will have the world community with us. But what I really hope most of all is that there will be a diplomatic resolution of this, that Saddam Hussein will move away from his present position. But if you were
I think all of our experience of Saddam Hussein teaches us that diplomacy has very little chance of working unless it is clear to him that if diplomacy does not work, then the threat and the reality of force is there.
I can only say, I said the charges aren't